Let's be real for a second. You're currently vibrating at the frequency of a damp sponge. You're sitting there, staring at this screen, and your nervous system is held together by 3 shots of over-roasted espresso and a prayer. You feel like a ghost in the machine, except the machine is a 2005 Dell laptop trying to run a $1 trillion simulation in 4K. You think you're tired because you work too hard? That's the lie they sold you so you'd feel noble about your own exhaustion. The truth is much uglier. You aren't tired, you're leaking. Most people treat their bodies like a phone battery, something you drain all day and hope to plug in at night. That's NPC logic. That's why you wake up at 7 a.m. feeling like you've just been hit by a freight train filled with bricks. The system loves you this way. A tired human is a compliant human. When you're stuck in a burnout loop, you don't have the bandwidth to innovate, to resist, or to even notice that your life is being harvested for data and debt. Your fatigue is literally a tax you pay to stay in the middle class. Now, look at the people at the top, the real players. You think they're superhuman? That they have better genetics? Please. Most of them have the same generic biological hardware you do. The difference is, they've stopped running the mediocrity script on their bodies. They don't see their body as a battery, they see it as a power plant. A battery contains energy. A power plant generates it. If you're waiting for rest to save you, you're going to be waiting until you're dead. Rest is a scam for people who don't know how to recover. In the next few minutes, we're doing a full system overhaul. No manifesting, no positive vibes, and definitely no drinking more water nonsense. We are installing 5 specific, brutal, and highly effective biological protocols. We aren't just managing your energy. We are turning your body from a leaking battery into a nuclear reactor. Strap in. It's time to stop running on empty and start rewriting the hardware. When you feel exhausted, your first instinct is to save energy. You head for the couch, order a pizza, and try to move as little as possible. You think you're recharging. In reality, you're just letting your biological hardware rot. Think about your body like a high-performance sports car. If you leave a Ferrari in a garage for 6 months, the battery dies, the fuel goes stale, and the engine seizes up. It doesn't save its performance, it loses it. You are always tired because you've turned your $100 million meat suit into a stationary paperweight. Here's the science of why you feel like a zombie at 3 p.m. Your brain is the most energy-hungry processor in the world, and it runs on a liquid cooling system called blood. When you sit for 8 hours, your circulation turns into a stagnant swamp. Your heart rate drops, your oxygen levels plummet, and your brain starts swimming in its own metabolic waste. That brain fog isn't a lack of sleep, it's your hardware suffocating. You aren't burned out, you're just biologically stagnant. The 1% understand a law of physics that the 99% ignore. Energy is a result of movement, not a prerequisite for it. A power plant doesn't contain electricity. It creates it by turning a turbine. If you want more energy, you have to demand it from your cells. This is why the hardware reboot is non-negotiable. When you force your heart to pump and your lungs to expand, you aren't using up your battery. You are upgrading the alternator. You are telling your mitochondria, the demand is high. Start producing more fuel. Data shows that long-term physical stagnation causes your organ function to drop by 30%. Imagine trying to run your life at 70% capacity. Every task feels 30% harder. Every stressor feels 30% heavier. That's the always tired tax. The 1% don't exercise because they love the gym. They do it because it's the only way to remove that 30% drag on their performance. They move to stay anti-fragile. They train so that their hardware can handle the overclocking required to dominate the market. From now on, stop seeing exercise as a chore to lose weight. See it as a system flush. If you're tired, don't sit down, stand up. Force the blood to your brain. Aggressively reboot the hardware. Because in the game of life, the person with the most oxygen in their system is the one who makes the fewest mistakes. You think you're tired because of your to-do list. You're wrong. You're tired because your brain is currently a 24/7 dumpster fire of low-quality information. Every 15-second doom scroll, every clickbait headline, every mindless notification is a micro leak in your energy tank. You are forcing your brain to process millions of bits of useless data that lead to zero outcomes. That's not relaxing. It's cognitive overload. You aren't resting. You're just making your processor run hot until it throttles. The 1% aren't smarter because they were born that way. They are smarter because they have better filters. When you read a high-density book, a biography of a titan or a masterwork on strategy, you aren't just learning facts. You are installing a pre-built mental model. Think about it. Why spend 10 hours agonizing over a decision when you can download the logic of someone who already solved that problem 50 years ago? Reading is the ultimate energy-saving hack. It allows you to navigate the world using someone else's GPS, so your own brain doesn't have to waste fuel building the map from scratch. The reason you're always tired is decision fatigue. You're trying to figure out life in real time with no presets. That is exhausting. The 1% use the intellectual raid to steal cheat codes, while the 99% are draining their batteries trying to reinvent the wheel. The 1% are using the Rockefeller script, or the Stoic protocol, to handle complex problems with zero mental effort. They don't get tired because they don't have to think as much. They just execute based on high-quality patterns. Here's the protocol. 30 minutes of deep, high-density reading isn't an extra task. It's a mental flush. It pushes out the digital noise and replaces it with structured, high-leverage logic. It's the difference between eating a bowl of sugar and a high-protein steak. One gives you a 5-minute spike and a 3-hour crash. The other builds the muscle that carries you through the week. Stop letting the algorithm decide what your brain processes. That's how you stay an NPC. Become a cognitive predator. Raid the minds of the elite. Steal their clarity. Use their wisdom to cut through the fog. Because when your logic is sharp, life doesn't feel like a struggle anymore. It feels like a walk in the park. The real reason you're always tired has nothing to do with your bed. It's because you start your day by surrendering. When you hit that snooze button at 7 a.m., you aren't getting extra rest. You are telling your subconscious that your goals aren't worth getting out of bed for. You start your morning with a defeat. And then, the moment you grab your phone and check your notifications, you've officially been hijacked. You are now in reactive mode. Reactivity is the most exhausting state a human can exist in. When you respond to emails, DMs, and news the second you wake up, you are letting the world dictate your heart rate. You are running everyone else's errands while your own mission sits in the corner, gathering dust. By 10 a.m., you've already burned 50% of your decision-making fuel, just reacting to other people's emergencies. No wonder you're always tired. You've been running a mental marathon in a hamster wheel before you even had breakfast. The 1% don't rise and grind. They commit temporal theft. They understand time arbitrage. They steal the first 60 to 90 minutes of the day before the system even wakes up. This is the God hour. In this void, there are no notifications, no demands, and no noise. When you own the morning, you build a psychological buffer that lasts the whole day. You aren't tired because you woke up early. You're energized because you finally have a lead on the rest of the world. Control is the ultimate antidepressant. The example of Tim Cook waking up at 3:45 a.m. has been repeated until it's lost all meaning. If you think he does it just to work more hours, you've missed the point. Between 4 and 6 a.m., there is a statistical vacuum. This isn't just about the silence of your inbox. It's about your internal neurochemistry. At this hour, you are at the peak of your cortisol awakening response. Having just completed a final cycle of glymphatic drainage, where your brain literally flushes out metabolic waste, your prefrontal cortex is at its purest state. It has not yet been contaminated by dopamine-driven fragments of digital noise. While the 99% are being startled awake at 8 a.m., groggy with adenosine debt, the 1% have already finished their hardware reboot. They aren't tired because they've already won the most important battle of the day, the battle for the first hour. Here is the directive, the 60-minute blackout. From the moment you wake up, for 60 minutes, the phone stays in a different room. No news, no social media, no quick checks. Use that hour for the hardware reboot or the intellectual raid. When you finally engage with the world at 8 a.m., you won't be a tired victim. You'll be a strategic predator who has already won the day. You don't get energy, you protect it by refusing to let the world steal it in the first hour. You can have a nuclear reactor for a heart and a supercomputer for a brain, but you'll still stall if you're trying to drag 1,000 pounds of dead weight through the mud. The real reason you're always tired isn't the work itself, it's system friction. Think about your computer. When it starts running slow and the fan sounds like a jet engine, it's rarely because you opened one big app. It's because there are 50 background processes running that you don't even need. In your life, those background apps are called unmade decisions, toxic relationships you're trying to fix, and projects you know are dead ends but you're too proud to quit. Every maybe in your life is a micro leak in your energy tank. The 1% perform a mirror truth audit every single night. They don't just write a to-do list for tomorrow, they perform a biological autopsy on today. They look at every interaction, every meeting, and every task, and they ask one brutal question. Did this generate energy, or did it just consume it? If a task consumed energy but provided zero strategic leverage, it doesn't get rescheduled, it gets deleted from the code. The elite are ruthless with their bandwidth because they know that being busy is the most common form of laziness. It's a lazy way to avoid the hard, painful work of being effective. If you're tired, it's probably because you're spending 80% of your power on things that move the needle exactly 0 inches. Psychologically, what drains you the most are open loops. These are the unfinished business items that your brain keeps refreshing in the background while you're trying to sleep. I should call that client. I need to fix that leak. I wonder what they thought of my email. Each of these is a tiny demon process eating your RAM. The Mirror Truth Protocol requires you to close the loops before your head hits the pillow. You either do it, delegate it, or kill the project entirely. There is no, I'll think about it tomorrow. Thinking is an expensive biological process. Don't let the malware of today's indecision infect tomorrow's hardware performance. Here is how you execute the Mirror Truth. 5 minutes before bed, stand in front of that mirror. Audit your day. Identify the 3 things that drained you without giving you a return on investment. Maybe it was a gossip session at the water cooler. Maybe it was a quick check of social media that turned into a 2-hour spiral. Mark them. Recognize them as energy thieves. The 1% aren't superhuman, they just have fewer energy leaks. They move through the world with 0 friction because they've audited their life down to the essential, high-leverage actions. They don't have more fuel than you. They just have a better aerodynamic profile. If you want to stop being always tired, you have to stop the bleeding. Stop running apps that serve no master. Stop carrying weight that isn't yours. Use the Mirror Truth to prune the dead branches of your life, so the rest of the tree can finally get some sunlight. Clarity isn't just a mood, it's the ultimate energy-saving tool. We are closing an open loop right now. I want you to go to the comments and type the one energy leak you are deleting today. Kill the process by naming it. Let's start the biological audit in the comments right now. We've spent the last 15 minutes talking about how to push the engine, steal the time, and raid the knowledge. But here is the brutal truth. If you don't master the shutdown, you are essentially playing a high-stakes video game for 16 hours, and then pulling the power plug without hitting save. The 99% see sleep as a necessary evil, a biological tax they pay because they aren't strong enough to stay awake. They fight it until their eyelids feel like lead, usually while bathed in the radioactive blue light of a smartphone, doom scrolling themselves into a coma. The 1% see sleep as the strategic save point. When you enter deep sleep, your brain doesn't just turn off. It initiates a high-speed system defragmentation. Remember the metabolic waste we talked about in the Hardware Reboot? During sleep, your brain's glymphatic system literally flushes those toxins out. More importantly, this is when your intellectual raid actually pays off. Your brain takes the raw data you consume today and weaves it into the long-term architecture of your logic. You don't get smarter while you're reading, you get smarter while you're dreaming. If you skip the save point, you wake up at level 1 every single morning, wondering why you never seem to make progress. Let's be clear, watching Netflix until you pass out is not rest. That is passive degradation. You are just overstimulating your visual cortex until it crashes from exhaustion. The deep recovery is a deliberate, high-leverage protocol. Elite players treat their bedroom like a high-tech charging bay, not a lounge. The rules are simple but non-negotiable. Total darkness, a room cold enough to mimic a cryogenic chamber, and zero digital interference. They engineer their environment to ensure that every minute of shut-eye provides a 10 times return on energy. They don't just go to sleep. They optimize the recovery cycle so they can wake up and execute the temporal theft with lethal precision. Think of this as your biological dividend. In finance, you don't get rich during the workday. You get rich when the systems you built work for you while you're away. In biology, the same rule applies. Your muscles grow when you sleep. Your patterns consolidate when you sleep. Your energy tank refills when you sleep. If you're always tired, it's because you've broken the most fundamental contract with your own biology. You're trying to build a skyscraper's worth of success on a foundation of wet sand and caffeine. The deep recovery is the final piece of the puzzle. It's what allows you to wake up at 4 a.m. without feeling like a victim. It's what allows your brain to process the high-density information you're feeding it. Without this, you're just a fast car with no brakes. You're a high-end processor with no cooling system. Master the shutdown. Treat your recovery with the same intensity you treat your hustle, because the person who recovers the fastest is the one who can afford to go the hardest. They spent your whole life telling you that being tired was just part of the deal, that the burnout loop was the price of admission for a seat at the table. They were wrong. Fatigue wasn't your destiny, it was your prison. For years, you've been living as a ghost in your own machine. You had the ambition of a king, but the energy of a peasant. You were trying to build a legacy with a body that was constantly screaming for mercy. That ends today. Imagine, just for a second, the version of you that doesn't leak. Imagine a version of you whose hardware is so optimized, whose mind is so clear, and whose time is so protected that effort becomes a relic of the past. When you stop paying the NPC tax, you become something dangerous to the status quo. A human with unlimited bandwidth. The system isn't afraid of your ideas, it's afraid of your stamina. Because the person who can stay sharp while everyone else is fading is the one who ultimately writes the rules of the game. You don't upgrade your biology just to get more done. You do it because you have a moral obligation to see what you're actually capable of before your time in this simulation is up. You owe it to the version of you that dreamt of greatness when you were 10 years old. You owe it to the people you're supposed to lead to provide them with a lighthouse, not a flickering candle. The protocols are in your hands. The hardware reboot, the intellectual raid, the temporal theft, the mirror truth, and the deep recovery. These aren't just habits. They are the blueprints for a new life. You can close this video and return to the comfortable, hazy fatigue of the 99%. You can keep running the old, buggy script until the system finally shuts you down for good. Or you can decide that today is the day you stop being a ghost. The city is waking up. The 99% are reaching for their phones and surrendering their energy before their feet even hit the floor. But not you. You've got the code. You've got the power.